Too hot for TV.
Welcome back to Doctor Who Too Hot for TV. We are the podcast that looks at all things Doctor Who Extended Universe. Today, I'm joined by a new guest. Joining me for the first time, it's Dan Pinn. Dan, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for having me on, Dylan. I've been listening to this podcast for ages, so it's
amazing,
awesome to be on it.
You're our listener, then. That makes that makes a lot of sense. No, it's wonderful to have you here, and you've picked two very interesting things that we're going to cover today. But we'll get to them in a bit. I need to know how you became a Doctor Who fan, first of all.
My first memory of Doctor Who on the TV was the Arc of Infinity. So we're talking the Davison era.
Right.
But my dad wasn't very keen on science fiction, so we only watched the things that he wanted to watch. So for me,
right,
the books were the targets initially were my big thing. So I've got a complete set of targets.
Yeah, the listeners won't be able to see this, but in front of me behind Dan is a very impressive collection of shelves full of various Doctor Who ephemera, including target books.
Yeah, I mean, they were my in, really, and I've gone on many podcasts and kind of told how basically, that collection of target books was kick-started by, because I was quite lucky. There was a local bookshop in the town that I grew up in, and the guy that was running it, he was selling like those sort of like the 1980s targets for about 60p each.
Oh, the blue spines.
Earlier. Some of them were the blue spines, but most of them were sort of like the neon Davison logo. So it was like the Highlanders and Frontios and Caves of Androzani and all stuff like that. So I was able to kind of fill my boots really with with those. Yeah, and then I've got a couple of sisters that were quite a bit older than me. So when one of them went off and got married, I inherited her portable television. So from season 24 onwards, I basically watched. So that first McCoy season was my first one of Doctor Who. Proper one where I watched it week in, week out. So I'm kind of like one of those people that kind of I just caught the tail end series before it finished, and kind of those sort of teenage years where I kind of like were brought up on like the New Adventures and things like that. So that wilderness years kind of period's quite special to me, as it is to many of you guests on this podcast. So
indeed. So
yeah.
I'm guessing then, in terms of your relationship with spin-off media, like it stretches from the 90s to now, or do you have points where you're more into it, points where you're less into it?
Yeah, I mean, it basically from the end of the show right up to present day. If there's a book range that comes out, I tend to get it and add it to the ever growing collection. Yeah, it was more books than things like, because I think that's one of the great things about listening to this podcast is that it's been quite an education, because growing up in rural Devon, we didn't have things like Forbidden Planet or places where you could easily pick up, the straight to video releases. Even like I was thinking the other day, even for like Big Finish, when that happened, I was having to. You started off with like, it was almost like a coupon, wasn't it, in the back of like DW? Yeah. And you had to send the check in the post, and then 28 days later you would get it in the post, the actual CD, and it just. it's mad because it doesn't feel that long ago, but it feels like a really old-fashioned way of getting Doctor Who media.
Absolutely. I remember when the Virgin New Adventure range and Missing Adventures range came to an end, and they had a big sale because they had to get rid of all of their stock. And it was literally, again, a page you cut out of a tick list. And you could tick like The Well-Mannered War or Lung Barrow. And you could tick 30 books or something like that. And they would all arrive, and they were at discount rates of like £2.50 or something like that. Yeah. Some people got some absolute bargains at that point. Not me, unfortunately. You know, mine, but I had to pay not quite the big amounts that people pay now, but I've paid some larger amounts than I would have liked to have completed those sets.
Yeah, the only one of those expensive ones that I never got on publication was So Vile a Sin, and I think I paid 90 quid for that one.
That's not too bad.
It's not too bad, no. And that kind of finished the collection of those. So.
I think I paid about that for So Vile a Sin, but it goes for a lot more now.
Oh, yeah.
But I'll never sell it. What I'll do is I'll wait till the values decrease because nobody gives a fuck about Doctor Who in 40 years' time, just before I'm about to die. And then it'll just be something that my relatives don't know what to do with when I pass away. And they'll never know whether there was any value to it in the first place or not.
It was funny because I had my sister round on bank holiday, on the Sunday of the bank holiday just gone. And she was asking me, she goes, so how much do you reckon your collection's worth? And I said, I really don't know. And she goes, well, what's the most expensive book? And I said, well, I've got like, you know, like Lung Barrow and The Dying Days, you know, sort of thing. And I said, you know, they kind of go for anything between like, I don't know, 300 quid to 500 quid. So I said, there's some books in there that are quite expensive. And he goes, are you going to get them insured? And I go, well, no. But I was there thinking, well, maybe I should, because they're sort of like, you can't replace them, can you? Just cost an arm and a leg.
I moved house about 6 or 7 months ago, and I really thought I upped my contents insurance specifically for that purpose, because what you can't, as I understood it from, this is maybe a very dull conversation, but the people out there need to know this stuff. You can't insure a book for like 500 quid because it's not a big enough value. I've got one thing in my collection which is insured separately, which is the original art to the Shakedown New Adventure cover. That's the one thing where I insured it for a specific value of money. But with everything else, they were just like, what have you got? I said, well, it's loads of books and stuff like that. And it's like, they were like, what sort of books? I was like, Doctor Who books. And they were like, oh, what are they worth? And I said, well, you know, maybe 500 quid, some of them, but most of them are worth a £5 or a tenner. Yeah. And they were like, you just need to give us the value of the whole collection. But it's not, it's just covered as part, it was like, just up your sort of rate of what you've got in the house. So, the wise words to all the collectors out there.
Yeah. Yeah,
but I guess you could insure the collection as a whole. Just looking at mine now. You're listening to the Insurance Podcast, Collector's Insurance,
entertaining.
Yeah, next week, Inkwells. No, I can clearly see you've got shitloads of spin-off media. What was it about the books? Why? Because the moment they started doing audios, full cast audios, I sort of abandoned Doctor Who literary space and just went, well, this has got real Doctor Who actors in. Why do I need these things anymore?
I guess it was that reason that it wasn't that easy for me to get hold of things that were coming out on video or coming out on, well, initially it was tape, wasn't it? But then they, you know, CD. Yeah, so I think it was easy for me to get the books, but they just felt like fuel for the imagination, and I think that lots of people kind of talk about this, that there's a lot of Doctor Who stories that they came to first via the books, and what they saw when they actually saw the televised version didn't quite live up to what they were picturing in their mind's eye, as it were. Yeah, so I think it was just really it was convenience, but I think very quickly it was that you know, the fact that your imagination, there is no limit to it, and the pictures that you can paint in your mind, you know, it just limitless, and that was a really big thing for me. so yeah.
So you didn't pick a book to talk about today, though, did you? So why don't you tell everybody what it is you've chosen to chat about?
So I have chosen one comic strip and one Big Finish audio. So the comic strip is one from the Sylvester McCoy kind of era, sort of like the 90s. So I think I was quite a latecomer to Doctor Who magazine, really. I only really discovered it about sort of, I think my first issue was 175 or something like that. So we're talking like 91, 92. So, Doctor Who Purebloods, which is the one that we're going to discuss in a bit, sort of like was quite early on in my collection of Doctor Who magazines, I suppose. And again, I think just like the books, comic strips were really quite an important thing for me, because art was the only thing that I was really any good at school. And for a while, I had this wild dream that I would go and work for Marvel or Panini or whoever, and I would draw the comic strips,
Right.
But, after a while, I kind of realized that, those sort of things don't necessarily happen to lads from rural Devon. And I probably wasn't good enough either. So yeah, but it was, I just love the fact that they could tell such creative stories in just a handful of frames. It's just amazing. And some of those, I think the Seventh Doctor era was quite inconsistent. They were very good, or they were really, really shit. Whereas, like with the Eighth Doctor ones, the consistency of those was really, really high.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was another thing. It just got me hooked, and it was always the first thing I turned to every time I bought like a new copy, the new month's edition of Doctor Who magazine. It was straight to the comic strips for me.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
And the second thing you've chosen to talk about is a Big Finish story.
Yes. Yeah. This is another Sylvester McCoy. It's another Seventh Doctor. Again, I think that's, because that was like I say, my first memory was Peter Davison. Sylvester's kind of my Doctor, because that was when I started regularly watching. So I've picked one of his audios where he is without Ace.
Yeah.
Start, and it's Robophobia.
Indeed, which I think of as one of the newer stories, but is actually 14 years old.
Yeah, I was surprised. 2011. Man.
Yeah, if you'd said, I would have said maximum 5 years old, this story.
Yeah.
But,
yeah.
Wild.
Too hot for TV.
So we're going to jump into Pureblood first, which was written by Dan Abnett and with art by Colin Andrew. It was printed in Doctor Who magazine 193 to 196 from the 29th of October 1992 to the 21st of January 1993. News at the time: UK Gold had scheduled Doctor Who across the week, Monday to Friday at 5:30 p.m, and then an omnibus every Sunday morning. So Doctor Who may have been gone off BBC One, but it was on 6 days a week on UK Gold. Were you a UK Gold viewer?
Yes, I was, but I don't remember it during the week. I remember the omnibus edition on Sundays, where you had was it like Survivors, Blake 7, and then Doctor Who to finish.
Yeah, exactly. It's got a lot to answer for.
Yeah,
I think, because this was this is 92, 93. I don't think we had Sky TV until 96, 97. So I think by that point it was just a Sunday morning, and then I think they started doing evening repeats again later, but by that point I think I'd seen them all, so didn't need to tune in. Other news, bits and pieces. Some of you may remember the name David Burton, an actor from Sussex who apparently claimed he was the new Doctor Who. See Doctor Who magazine 179 and 180. Well, it seems possible that he is in some way connected with independent film and television series makers Handmade Films, who apparently put in a bid to produce the show a year or so back. Clearly they were unsuccessful, but that didn't seem to stop Mr. Burton from his claims. So, again, the mystery of David Burton, something that Mikey Smith touched upon when he interviewed him. But it's interesting that even sort of a year later, Doctor Who magazine are going, oh no, actually there may be some truth to it. It hadn't been dismissed outright. Good old David Burton, what a legend.
Incredible.
Another exciting bit of news. A tape containing episode 4 of The 10th Planet had been found, but it turned out it was blank. But that was like a big thing. I don't know whether that was the famous hoax or whether it was literally just a tape that was labelled badly. A silver nemesis was to get an extended VHS release. BBC Home Video were looking at making a 30th anniversary special, which would eventually be The Dark Dimension and eventually never happen. And this is a story that always comes up when I look back through old DWMs. Eric Saywood was about to novelise Resurrection and Revelation of the Daleks. Obviously, that didn't happen. And John Pertwee has been asked to revise his role for radio for the 30th anniversary.
It was good days.
It was good days. That's a whole lot of news. That covers all the key stories from the 90s, I think. Old Doctor coming back, missing episode not happening, future series, and Eric Saywood trying to novelise his Dalek stories.
Yeah, probably would have been better if he hadn't bothered, but yeah.
I mean, I wonder would they have been better if he'd done them in like 92, 93?
Yeah, probably. Yeah. Because
I've seen Eric Saywood at a convention in the last 18 months, and he's not the sharpest of men these days, shall we say. He's clearly got health problems, he's in a wheelchair, and he speaks quite slowly.
Okay.
And so I wonder if there's a bit of, when he finally got round to it, his brain isn't perhaps working in the same way that it would have done 30, 40 years ago. I mean, mine's not working in the same way it was working 30, 40 minutes ago. So, so maybe there was a world where those Saywood books were classics.
Yeah.
Because this would have been around the time that John Peel did the 2 Trout and Dalek stories as well. So you could kind of see an extended run of an extended version of both of those that embellished a bit, done by a Saywood who's still with it, maybe working.
Yeah, no, I think like with those 2 John Peel ones as well, the page count was much longer as well, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So had that, room to kind of tell a story, I suppose. But
I remember those books, those 2 Dalek stories being brilliant. But again, I was sort of 11, 12, and I'm scared that if I go back to them, they'll be shit, those books. So even when podcasts that I like do them, I never even listen to their podcasts. I'm just like, it's something I want to keep in my mind as they were great. You're going to tell me they're shit, aren't you? You're going to tell me.
No. No, I quite enjoy them because I revisited them not that long ago, and they were as good as I remember them being. To be
excellent.
Honest.
Okay, great. I'm going back.
Yeah, I think I enjoyed Power more than Evil, but yeah.
I remember Power did this thing that we would now call famwang, but at the time I thought was really exciting, is that it recapped the 10th Planet through the eyes of Sarah Jane Smith or something, who'd come to investigate it.
I think so. Yeah. But,
great stuff.
Yeah.
Other releases at the time, we had the computer game Dalek Attack, which was a platform, basically a shoot-'em-up. We had Doctor Who the 60s. The new adventures were Love and War and Transit. We had Doctor Who the Scripts, the Demons, the Universal Data Bank, the Handbook for the Fourth Doctor, and Terminus was released on VHS. Again, I remember all of those things coming out.
It's weird. Terminus was one that I didn't buy. I think I didn't see Terminus until either it was on UK Gold or the DVD release. I didn't buy it on VHS.
Well, and look what you were missing out on.
It was weird because I think I didn't. It was the same with Mordred Undead, but I bought Enlightenment.
Well, that's interesting.
What's that about?
Yeah,
I just go to the end.
The thing is, though, you had to pick and choose. It's pocket money, it's birthdays, it's Christmas. Yeah. You couldn't get them all; they were expensive, especially when they were coming out one a month. That's 120 quid a year or something, which is a lot of money when you're 10.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and I mean, you were quite lucky now and again. They did those, like, they reduced them down. Was it like $7.99?
Yeah,
and Woolies and stuff like that. That was where you filled the gaps. But yeah.
So I remember they did one of those $7.99 sales, and that's how I saw my last classic Doctor Who story that I hadn't seen, which was Paradise Towers. And I thought it was shit. I like it now, but it was just getting towards that point of my teenage years where I was starting to think Doctor Who could be a bit embarrassing. Yeah. And I loved the McCoy era, but I was sort of aware of the rep of his first season. I remember picking that up and going, oh no, this is really bad. But I was wrong.
Well, we all went through that phase, didn't we? Where, we become embarrassed of the thing that we love.
Yeah, quite.
Too hot for TV.
As the Sontaran homeworld Sontara is destroyed by the Rutans, Marshal Stave escapes with a genetic race pool aboard the Warbug. Meanwhile, the Seventh Doctor and his companion Benny arrive at the Pandora Spindle, an orbital genetics lab soon seized by Sontarans seeking a new home on the planet below. When a disguised Rutan spy alerts their pureblood Sontaran allies who view clone Sontarans as inferior, the Doctor must broker a peace between the rival Sontaran factions and expose the Rutans' manipulation. With Benny securing a confession from the Rutan spy, the Doctor convinces the pureblood leader to unite with the clones to repel the Rutans. In return, the Doctor demands the Sontarans erase all memory of humanity from their race pool, sparing Earth from Sontaran interference for generations. Though Benny is sceptical, the Doctor assures her history is already on their side.
Too hot for TV.
So, why did you pick Pure Blood?
It was one of those ones that kind of sticks out in my mind, which is weird because it wasn't by an artist that I particularly remember. Because I mean, like it's sort of like. I always used to get like Lee Sullivan, for instance.
Yeah.
Still doing them. He did Transformers and all sorts. He was a particular favourite of mine because I think like his likenesses were just so damn good, and he could tell a really good story with minimum effort and what have you. But I think this is one that stuck out because I must have, because this was the first time we'd kind of seen the Sontarans since the Two Doctors, which I don't remember. But I got the Time Warrior on VHS, and I was hooked on the Sontarans. They were sort of thing. I was able to pick up like the Sontaran Experiment in the bookshop that was selling them for 60p.
Right.
The cover on that, like you got Tom on the front with the big Sontaran helmet behind. Yeah. Anything. So the Sontarans were someone were an alien race that kind of I vibed with quite a bit, and I liked the story that it kind of tells of this sort of warrior race that are kind of really down on their luck at this point. They're kind of on the
kind of feel sorry for the Sontarans.
Yeah. They're sort of verge of extinction and what have you. It's weird, isn't it? Because, like I say, the Seventh Doctor comic strips the quality of them varied quite greatly. They were either very good or they were really, really poor. And you had some really daft ones, like was it Dr. Conqueror, where he was and stuff like that.
Yeah.
They were kind of like throwaway strips, weren't they? In like things like an Incredible Hulk magazine and stuff like that.
But then I think they started eventually to just go, right, we're going to tie them into the new adventures as we get here and sort of try and make them a more cohesive run. They still do things like a couple of years later, they'll be like, oh no, we're going to jump between different Doctors and stuff like that. So they don't quite have the through line that the Eighth Doctor or indeed the Sixth Doctor ones had before it. But it's sort of like, it's all part of the tapestry of the show, isn't it? And sometimes it's quite interesting to see sort of those different worlds and how they handle a particular Doctor.
And I think that's a really good point. It was sort of like because I was I guess starting to get into, because I'd initially been quite resistant with the new adventures because the concept of being too broad and too deep kind of scared me a little bit because I sort of like 11 or 12 kind of thing. It was like and the page count as well, it was sort of, but I was kind of I'd picked one up from like the school library and kind of really enjoyed that. I was aware that this was going to be the first strip that had Benny Summerfield in it.
Yeah.
So that, like you say, there was that sort of there was a greater cohesion between what was happening in the book publications and they were that continuity was kind of being together. So I don't know whether that's another reason why this one kind of sticks in my mind, where a lot around that era didn't.
I can see why it would. Like, I've not read this before, but I suddenly feel like, not necessarily in the type of storytelling, but in the visuals, I suddenly feel like I'm in the New Adventures. Like these sort of big battle cruisers and these imposing Sontarans, and like that's how the New Adventures felt when I did dip into them at the time. Like they were broad and deep in terms of the sort of universe they were set in, as well as the storytelling. It was Doctor Who, the big sci-fi show, which obviously it couldn't be in 1989. So I kind of feel I'm suddenly reading a comic that I am not familiar with, but I feel I'm in familiar territory.
Yes, yeah, and I think that's the thing, because you get like there's lots of references in there to what we will kind of know as those sort of New Adventure tropes as well, isn't there? Because I did not pick up on this when I read it originally, when in the magazine, but there's a lot of New Adventure swearing in there, isn't there?
Yeah,
crocking. Yeah. And I had no idea that was in there, and obviously reread it for this, and I was like, gee whiz, there's one character in there. Is it Donna or something? And it's pretty much the only thing she says. Everything is crock this and crock that, and so you get those kind of things bleeding in, and I think there's reference to Heaven, isn't there, which is the setting for Love and War, where the Seventh Doctor meets Benny.
Yeah.
Yes, there was all this kind of knitting together, but also I think there's all that sort of fan wankery in there as well, isn't there? Where you've got the there's a lot of like lore about the Sontarans. There's also lore about their war with the Routons and stuff like that. So the stories that we never really got to see on the TV, they're kind of here in the comic strip, which is quite fun.
But also, it's still bonkers to me that now the series has come back as well, we've still never had those stories. It just seems like such an obvious one to tell. I don't like, what is wrong with everybody who's ever written for Doctor Who?
Yeah, that's the thing, that they're there, aren't they? The target's set up to hit, but they're just missing them each and every time.
Doctor Who's had its many highs and its many lows, but I can't believe that Chris Chibnall, Stephen Moffat or Rusty Davis at some point didn't go, we should do the Sontarans and the Routons. We've got the Sontarans. We use them all the fucking time. How do we spice this up a little bit?
Yes. Yeah.
Shapeshifters, yeah, sure. But no.
We've never had that genesis of the Sontarans, have we?
No.
We know how the Cybermen happened. We know how the Daleks kicked off. Not for the Sontarans,
No.
So here it is.
Exactly. So let's talk a little bit about how this deals with the Sontarans and their mythology, because it's sort of an origin story. It's sort of about heritage more than an origin, but I think you get a good enough feel of what the Sontarans were at one point and what they evolved to. So how do we feel about that?
Yeah, I think it kind of makes sense, doesn't it? That so we've got this sort of like, we got the Sontarans as we know them now as a clone species, but they also then come into contact with like a lost
tribe. Yeah, from before the Rutan War.
Yeah, so they're not clones. They sort of they're purebloods, purebred. And I think that's really interesting because basically, for the Sontarans to sort of be able to match the Routons, that they needed to make that decision to become a clone race, because they just couldn't breed people quick enough, whereas cloning them, they can do it in batches of millions and billions at a time, sort of thing. So that kind of really does kind of make sense, and you kind of get that. And also I kind of like that portrayal of the original Sontarans in it, where they're kind of they feel a bit like I'm not big on Star Trek, but they feel a bit like Klingon.
Oh yeah, no, I'm right.
The way that they look and the sort of leather and the studs, and
it's somewhere between a Klingon and an Ogron, I think.
Yes, yeah, definitely. So I think that it for me, it feels like that's a natural kind of way for them to go. That feels like that their genesis.
Yeah, it's an interesting take. Because I wasn't sure where this was going to go. I mean, from the title Pureblood, I was like, okay, there's going to be like a weird mutated faction or something, but it never occurred to me that it was actually going to be an origin story, or if they're past catching up with them. And I just thought it worked really well. Like, it's, you've got limited amounts of panels to tell the story, limited amounts of dialogue, and I think it doesn't tell you the full genesis, but it gives you enough that you can piece the rest of it together.
Yeah, definitely. And then to have that, that this lost tribe of Sontarans are, more than happy to throw their lot in with the Routons because they don't agree with the Sontarans becoming a clone race, that they feel that they've gone away from their heritage and all that sort of thing. And that kind of, you can see that as well being quite a realistic kind of route for someone to kind of take and a stance to have, I suppose.
Yeah.
But yeah. So it's pretty cool.
It's also like, because I went in sort of expecting a Sontaran Rutan story. And actually, the Rutans here, obviously they sort of get their ultimate victory in that they destroy the Sontaran homeworld. And these Sontarans run off with the race bank, and it's sort of a chase movie. But, I mean, as we mentioned earlier, you sort of end up feeling a slight amount of sympathy for the Sontarans, because it really is like the last of their kind. And the Routans, as a result of this, even though they're not huge in the story, come across as, I mean, they're the aggressor and slightly more militant, which I think is not a nice twist, because we always knew they were baddies.
Yeah.
But I don't know why. My association with Doctor Who is the Routons and the Sontarans are at war, and the Sontarans are worse than the Routons, but actually they're as bad as each other. But that's just always been the way that I've thought of it for some reason. I don't know why that is.
Maybe it's because we've seen more of the Sontarans. Where it's only like Horror Fang Rock, isn't it, where we actually get to meet a Rutan.
Yeah.
Only time ever, really.
Yeah.
And so we've seen the Sontarans, in multiple stories, and the Doctor's defeated them. They're the big bad, sort of thing. So I guess again that feels like a natural thing, it stands to take, that they're the bad guys in this war. Whereas, quite rightly in this, it's kind of, they're in this sort of impasse, aren't they? Where they're both holding each other in check. They're both as bad as each other in many respects. Yeah. Which is why we get this scenario where the Doctor is happy to help, get the Sontarans out of this, situation that they're in, because basically, keeping those two in this sort of headlock is the way forward for this part of the galaxy to kind of thrive and survive.
Yeah. And so what about the use of not just the Doctor and Benny, but the supporting cast within the story? How do you feel that works?
Yeah, because again, because we've got this, as you say, we've got this group of Sontarans that have escaped with the gene pool. So they've found somewhere where they can, which is this kind of research station where they do genetics and all that sort of stuff. So it kind of makes sense that they go there, and that we've got these. So they've got the facilities to be able to kickstart the gene pool, get it working, but also they've also got the know-how as well through these human scientists. Mm. And I think it's quite clever that I think it's mentioned in the actual story where the Routons kind of go, right, well, if we destroy Sontara, they're probably going to escape with this gene bank. Mm. So we're going to put an operative in every possible place that could kind of help them.
Yeah.
So like the Sontaran geneticist. Oh, can't get my teeth around that. But anyhow, you know what I mean. He gets killed by the Rutan quite in an accident.
Yeah.
So basically that means that they're then reliant on the help of the Doctor and these scientists from Earth as well. Yeah. So I think that's really good. Again, it's sort of like it feels like it's kind of well plotted. You know, this scenario would mean this happens, and then this happens, this sort of thing. So I think that's pretty cool.
There's a real economy of storytelling, though, in terms of how the involvement of the Doctor and the other companions, because they've realised they've only got a limited amount of panels and dialogue. So actually, this support cast of characters, they don't actually say an awful lot. They sort of do what they need to, and they're in all the frames and stuff like that. So they feel more present. But I couldn't really, you know, some comic strips you'll go, oh, that was an amazing character. I hope they bring that person back. This is just like scientist A, B, C, and D almost.
Yeah, because that's the thing. Because that's the thing. The artwork is depicting this quite a big group of scientists.
Yeah.
You really only got 3 that actually do or say anything, you know, and that's like the sort of the chief scientist, the scientist that the Ruton has kind of taken over, and then obviously Donna, who's potty mouth and swearing left, right, and centre sort of thing. But other than that, they're just kind of background, aren't they? Just there to kind of push the plot along as and when they need it to do.
Yeah, and sort of make the world feel populated and lived in. And then the use of the Doctor and Benny as well. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think it's good because with the new adventures, and I think I'm probably going to touch on this in the audio drama later. You've got in the new adventures, the Doctor is portrayed as this godlike times champion, kind of all-knowing, always 1, 2, 3 steps ahead of everyone else and all this sort of thing. Whereas in this, it feels quite traditional. It feels quite close to, I suppose, the Seventh Doctor that we kind of saw early on in his run, where he wasn't quite as manipulative. He wasn't quite as ahead of everyone else as you know. So, you know, they rock up on, you know, they accidentally materialize on this space station. It just so happens to be where the Sontarans end up. So everything's all by chance, and you know, which is feels quite different, because at this point we were getting this kind of version of the Seventh Doctor where he you know, who's like I say, this godlike person. So I think that's quite refreshing, and you know, and the fact that he's having to think his way out of this, you know. And I think at one point Benny sort of says, well, why are you helping them? You've got a chance to kind of eradicate them. And obviously he explains that, I think it's like referring to Genesis of the Daleks, that he's had this opportunity to get rid of evil races in the past, and he didn't take them. And whereas, you know, and then he kind of explains that there's a lot of good comes out of the bad and all this sort of stuff. So it feels quite a moral version of the Seventh Doctor as well. And I think, like, obviously at this point we don't really know Benny very well, so we haven't got the you know, the alcoholic wisecracking. I mean, she does do a bit of wisecracking and all that sort of stuff throughout, but also she has kind of like a big part to play, because she's the one that kind of helps with the resolution of kind of bringing the purebloods round to the way of thinking that the modern day Sontarans are, sort of thing, because she, you know, she's trying to strike a deal with the Ruton, and obviously unbeknown to the Ruton, they're filming it so that the purebloods can see what really is going to go down.
Yeah. Well, I think it's interesting you say that about Benny, because you're right, she's not fully formed here. And there's a little bit of, for the first sort of 3 parts, she is a more sort of, what is it, Doctor sort of companion. And you're like, she's very much more in that traditional mould. She's, as you say, she's instrumental to resolving the plot. So she gets some agency in a way that I don't think a trad Doctor Who companion necessarily would have done. But it's, I was a bit like, when it first started, I'm like, oh, what are they doing with Benny? And then I looked and it's like, Love and War's just come out. We're not quite, we don't have the Benny that we all sort of know and love today at this point.
Well, it was funny because when it was sort of doing a little bit of like looking up about stuff like this, they were kind of going on that these are probably the first visuals that we got of Benny, and that therefore why it doesn't look like the Benny that we've come to know and love. But I think at the time wasn't a problem because we were all new to it. We didn't have any hindsight to kind of fall back on.
Yeah.
So it's funny. So it is very much the kind of, with Bernice, they're kind of very much feeling their way into that character, even with the visuals, let alone the character, because there wasn't a great deal to kind of hang it on at that point.
And so do you think it's a sort of satisfactory beginning, middle and end resolution? Because it can be difficult for comic strips sometimes to really feel quite as expansive and indeed sort of intricate as say a New Adventure can get and stuff like that. But does that work here?
I think for me, looking at it with a designer's eye, I think like, I think like the story feels quite well plotted. It feels it kind of feels quite satisfying. I think sometimes the visuals are either fantastic, but then the likeness kind of goes a bit squiffy in places, and you think, who the heck is that? That's not the Seventh Doctor. So I think that kind of jars with me a little bit. But I think, it feels like quite a satisfying story, and it's one of those, like I think like we've discussed, there's a lot in there. Yeah, kind of ticks my boxes. It rings my bells, sort of thing. I'm quite quite happy with it, quite satisfied.
I did go into part 4 going, this is the final part. I'm not sure how they're going to wrap this up and whether they're going to do it satisfactorily, but I do think the resolution works. I think it speeds along, tells like a big sort of what feels like a big sci-fi story, but actually that's only told by a couple of panels of spaceships and war fleets, and the rest of it is people talking in rooms. but I think it works really well
because I think that's the thing, isn't it? The resolution is a talky one, not an action one, isn't it? Because it is the Doctor reasoning with the original Pureblood Sontarans to kind of show them the error of their ways and that the actions that they've taken are not good for the Sontaran. Yeah, so I think it's one of those where it's a bit more sort of a talky kind of ending to what is quite action packed. From because it starts off with basically Sontara being under attack from at that point. We think it's the Routons, but it isn't. It's the Pureblood Sontarans. Yeah. Breaching the defenses and taking out all of the Sontarans as we know them, sort of thing. So it's quite weird how it starts off, and it's like it is those big space opera type space battles, but the actual resolution is sort of like talking through and reasoning and the Doctor being clever.
Yeah, which is quite satisfying. Comic strips especially can always end with a big bang because it's the easiest way to finish things off, and they look cool on a page.
Yeah.
But speaking of looking cool on a page, what about the art? How do we feel? How does that work for you?
Yeah, I think like I say, it's varied. And when I say varied, I think it is the likenesses, but I seem to remember that the comic book artists struggled with initially with a likeness for Sylvester, didn't they? It was easy for them to draw, and I think, like I say, some people got it very good, like Lee Sullivan for instance. And I checked out because Colin Andrew did Final Genesis, which is a Seventh Doctor and a Silurian story, isn't it? Where basically it's an alternative Earth where the the Silurians and humans are living peacefully together, kind of
side by side, hand in hand.
Side by side, yeah. And we were getting blood heat in the books, which is a similar story, which is weird, but hey. Yeah, and the artwork there is very similar and kind of varied, but I think again it's likenesses, but you've got some quite memorable kind of, for me, the one where the Doctor's been zapped by the by the Ruton, and he's sort of going backwards like that sort of thing. And you can see that he's got his socks are the same pattern as his tank top. Little things like that. I love little things like little details. But also, like I think like when Bennis is kind of trying to strike a deal with the Ruton in sort of like the cell that when he's held prisoner, you've got like some nice kind of visuals where he's turning from sort of human form to a bit more blobby kind of Ruton, and those were really good as well. So there's some quite striking visuals in there, as you would expect.
I really like the sort of tall, striking Sontarans. Yeah. Now, I do think there's a bit of a myth about Sontarans that they're small. In The Time Warrior, the Doctor goes nasty, brutish, and short. But John Pertwee was 6'3". When you look at a Sontaran next to him, Lynx, there's maybe 3 inches. So although Sontarans are 6 foot, Kevin Lindsay plays the next Sontaran, so that's 6 foot. And then after that, they just seem to cast tall guys. So it's only really the new series that honours a line in that script the first time round.
Yeah.
So I can't remember for sure, but it feels like they're quite tall in Flux. I could be wrong.
Yes.
Although you don't really see them around a lot of humans, so maybe I'm mistaken there. But yeah, I quite like them when they're imposing, and I'm thinking, the Two Doctors has a lot of issues to it, but there's some cool images of those tall Sontarans in Spain or on the space station, wherever, and I think they translate really well here. So I'm all for making Sontarans tall again.
Yeah, because that was the thing. I was trying to work out what era Sontarans these are, because I think you're right. These feel like the Two Doctor version of the Sontaran, the ones that are drawn there, because I think there's one bit where it hasn't like the Sontaran leader's got the Doctor by the scruff of the neck, kind of like he's like dangling off the floor kind of thing. So so it definitely feels like, but then towards the end the Doctor says, "Oh, can you do something for me?" and kind of wipe any mention of the Earth and humans out of your race bank, so that it would give the humans a bit of breathing space before you turn your attention to it, which allegedly is lining up the Sontaran experiment. So it's
that's interesting.
Yes, no, so I don't know. that bit was a little bit confused.
Yeah, because there's even a little box, like an asterisk, and then a little box that says "See Sontaran experiment."
Yeah.
For like anybody who was reading Doctor Who magazine at that point hadn't seen the Sontaran experiment. Is there anything else you want to say on Pureblood?
I don't think so. I think that we've pretty much kind of gone through all of those things. I think actually one thing we haven't really talked about Dan Abnett, the writer. We've talked about Colin Andrew, the artist. And it was funny because Dan Abnett is a name that I associate with Warhammer 40,000 and things like Horus Heresy. So I don't know if you're into those sort of things.
It's not my world, no.
I was as a adolescent teenager. I kind of know him from that. So I was quite surprised when going back to this and finding out it was a Dan Abnett story.
Yeah.
Because, it's not someone that I associate with Doctor Who. Although, saying that, I was then looking at on my shelves and I've got, is it the Silent Stars Go By, which is like a Dr. Harback that he wrote. And I think he did a Torchwood as well, novel. But yeah, so it's interesting to know that he's got like a bit of pedigree when it comes to Doctor Who.
Yeah, well, because he's a name I only really know from Doctor Who, but he's done Judge Dredd, Guardians of the Galaxy, The Punisher, X-Men, things like that. So he's been around all the big Marvel titles, and of course this was a Marvel title at the time as well.
Yeah.
One thing I have to point out, because it's the sort of thing people come here for. In the first part, it says that this is around the time of the Second Dalek War in the 26th century, and then in the next part it says it's the 25th century. But maybe it was just a big long war.
Maybe. Yeah.
That's my headcanon. So, if there's nothing else to say, is it a clanger, a banger, or an average meander?
I'm going to say it's a crooking banger.
It's a banger from me too. I'd never experienced it before.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was great to visit it. I love a Sontaran, and I love it when people do something different with Sontarans. They're very easy to just be sort of angry cannon fodder aliens, which has had the new series use them a lot, and that's fine, and there's some great stories there, but I like it when they do something a little bit different, as they did here.
I think actually that's kind of jogged my memory a little bit, because that was one thing I was thinking, because like when we, and I think you've spoken about this on other episodes of Too Hot for TV, that generally the Sontarans are a kind of comic species, that sometimes it's kind of, there's a humorous element to them. Whereas in this, they're handled very seriously.
Absolutely, yeah.
In a way, perhaps they've never been before or after, maybe?
I think spin-off media quite often makes them serious like this, and then I think when the new series came back, spin-off media started to make them a little bit more comical. I think it's a very 90s thing to take the Sontarans incredibly seriously, and I think it also goes to show that it really works. And sometimes when you're taking an old enemy, you can kind of pastiche and take the piss out of them a little bit, or you can do something really interesting, and I think this does something really interesting and actually makes them a slightly more credible threat.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's the thing. It probably did pave the way for things like Shakedown and what have, where it was kind of, they weren't playing it for laughs as so much.
Too hot for TV.
The next thing we're going to cover is Robophobia from Big Finished. It's written by Nick Briggs. It's directed by Nick Briggs. It's produced by David Richardson. It was released on the 15th of July 2011 and was recorded on the 7th and 8th of March 2011 at the Moat Studios. News at the time, Series 6B had just finished recording, and this is a sign in the changing nature of viewing habits and something long lost to time. BBC Worldwide has made available a series of digitally remastered Doctor Who stories to rent via Facebook. By using Facebook credits, users visiting the official Doctor Who page can stream a selection of 9 stories. 100,000 BC, Tomb of the Cybermen, The Time Warrior, City of Death, Earthshock, Attack of the Cybermen, Greatest Show in the Galaxy, End of the World, Silence in the Library, Forest of the Dead. So I have no memory of that happening. I don't think I've ever watched a film or a TV show via Facebook credits. What about you?
No, I have no idea about that at all. That was even a thing.
Yeah, apparently so. Once upon a time. That could, if that had taken off, we could have all been watching through Facebook.
It's a strange Well, some of those feel like a strange choice for some doctors. Like Attack of the Cybermen and Greatest Show in the Galaxy feel like strange choices for 6 and 7. Earthshock, City of Death,
other news, a new exhibition had opened at the Cartoon Museum in London, which celebrates the history of Doctor Who art in comics and annuals from 1964 to 2011. I did not see that, but I wish I had.
I think like it's kind of been rehashed, hasn't it? In several iterations. I believe they had a similar sort of thing tacked on to like the Doctor Who experience in Cardiff for a while as well, didn't it?
There's the one more recently that I went to see in Weston-super-Mare about a year ago, but that was mainly covers. There was a little bit of comic art, but probably one wall of it. Other releases at the time from Audio Go, we had The Eye of the Jungle, starring the 11th Doctor, Amy and Rory. We had The Fury from the Deep soundtrack and the Chase audiobook. On TV, we had Torchwood Miracle Day. On DVD, we had Series 6 Part 1 and Paradise Towers. And then from Big Finish, we had the companion chronicle Tales of the Vault and Earth Aid, featuring the 7th Doctor, Ace and Ray. Remember any of those? Any stick out? Any exciting releases there?
I remember some of them, but they're not necessarily because they were good.
Do you remember some of them because they were bad? You're talking about Earth Aid, aren't you?
Earth Aid, yeah. I think that whole premise of season 27 was a bit of a disappointment for everyone. we'd waited so long to kind of like, and we'd heard so many stories, but it was all kind of based on a couple of set pieces, wasn't it? Like the Doctor being in the safe and that sort of stuff. There was no real outlines or anything like that, and so it didn't land.
It didn't quite land, and also like it's just not very exciting. It's fine. They're all fine Doctor Who stories, but they just sort of all of them bumble along, and you're like, this is not. What it should have been is an exciting conclusion to the Sylvester McCoy era, done in the style of 3 and 4 part stories, things like that. Exactly what the show was when it left. But instead it was just like, well, Big Finish have kind of already done this and better actually. Like, I mean, what we're going to cover today is a better story and feels more in line with where they were going on TV than those do. But,
Yeah, and I think it's sort of like, because Andrew Cartmell's when you think of like most of the script editors of Doctor Who did have their own, had a go at writing a story for TV, didn't they? Whereas Andrew Cartmell never did, but then because there wasn't enough slots to kind of fit him in, but it kind of feels like maybe that was a good thing.
Yeah, you do walk away from that season sort of going, oh. But maybe Andrew Cartmell wasn't the guy to write Doctor Who. But then he did some comic strips in the early 90s that were quite good. So,
Yeah.
Too hot for TV.
Aboard the Caldor cargo vessel Lorelei, carrying over 157,000 robots to Ventalis, the Doctor faces danger when crew member Tal Karras is mysteriously killed by a robot. Medtech Livchenko investigates alongside pilot Baz Pellico, while the Doctor, undercover as an engineer, urges them to examine Tal's missing files. Amidst Captain Celleret's focus on early delivery and Security Chief Farrell's growing paranoia, deadly sabotage unfolds. Crew members die, bombs explode, and robots are framed for a rebellion. The Doctor uncovers that Tal was a covert agent monitoring robot threats, but was murdered by Farrell, who faked his own death and orchestrated the chaos to provoke a robot-human conflict, as he was suffering robophobia after the death of his wife, which he wrongly attributed to the robots. As the ship spirals towards destruction, the Doctor uses the TARDIS to buy time for evacuation, with the robots sacrificing themselves to save the crew.
Too hot for TV.
So, why robophobia?
I'm a big fan of the Seventh Doctor, but I do believe that of all of the classic Doctors that have kind of, or those initial ones where we had 5, 6, 7, and 8, he probably was the one that didn't quite translate to audio quite as well as the others. I'm not in the same school of thought as our dear friend Joe Ford is about Sophie Aldred and Ace, but I think the audios that we get where it's just the Seventh Doctor and he's going solo, he hasn't got Ace with him, there's no Hex, I think they're some of my favourite ones. I was trying to think, there's like Valhalla where it's got like Michelle Gomez in it. There's one with the Ice Warriors with she was a Bond girl for Timothy Dalton, wasn't she? I can't remember her name now. But but there were sort of like 3 or 4 of them, and I really like them because I think they kind of play to Sylvester McCoy's strengths, because it allows for that kind of mysterious, those quieter moments, because I think he does those better. It's the one where he goes a bit over the top where I think it doesn't quite work. Mm. But yeah, so I think of those 3 or 4 that I've actually listened to of solo ones. There may be more, because
I'm sure there are.
I tend to cherry pick Big Finish. I don't,
because you don't have an infinite amount of spare time.
Well, or the money, it's the money, I think, more than anything. But I think this one is my favourite of those ones that I have actually listened to, where it's just Sylvester on his Todd. And who doesn't like the Voc Robots from Robots of Death?
Well, quite. So this is an interesting one for me for a couple of reasons.
Mm-hmm.
Number one, I do agree with you. I think it took a little bit of time for the Seventh Doctor to find his feet at a Big Finish. But by the time Hex joined, I was sort of sold, and there was an arc there that I was really invested in. The McCoy era is my favourite era of the classic series. So if it's not quite right, then I kind of feel like I've been in the way that, like, Peter Davison's era is probably my least favourite. So when Big Finish do a Peter Davison that's there's something about Peter Davison at Big Finish that they're making more my sort of Doctor Who with that, whereas I've got quite strict views about sort of the Seventh Doctor, I guess you'd say.
Yeah.
So having said that, I heard this when it came out, and I was just a bit bored by it at the time. And I think two things happened. Number one, this was definitely around the time I did a full listen through of all of the main range of Big Finish. So I was probably a little bit bored of it by then. And I just heard the Magic Bullet spin-off Caldor City, which is like the 6-part series about Caldor City starring Paul Darrow and people like that. And I thought that was fucking brilliant, and I still do. So when I came to this, I think my expectations were very, very high. And so I was disappointed. And also I said, I mean, what number Big Finish is this?
140 something, isn't it?
So I will have listened over the course of, say, 2 years to 140 Doctor Who stories.
Wow.
I should point out I was unemployed at the time for a fair amount of it. So I had a lot of spare time. But,
how many were you doing a day?
They were just, I'm someone that's always has stuff on.
Yeah,
when I'm doing things. So you get through a lot of things. And if I go to the gym, I have a Big Finish audio on. Well, then I did, not always now. But anyway, so I just wasn't that impressed. I was just like, oh, it's a bit meh. Plus, throw in Nicola Walker, who really ruined Spooks for me when I was in Spooks. And this just wasn't for me. But I came back to it this time. I thought it was fucking brilliant. I think, like, 2011 Dylan was a prick. It's not the most groundbreaking Doctor Who story, but it's a brilliant story for the Seventh Doctor. Great use of the Voc Robots. Nicola Walker's great in it. And I was just like, this just works on every level for me. So I'm really happy to be back with it. What say you? Is it one that you are very fond of?
Yeah, I think, because like I say, when it comes to Big Finish, I think in the grand scheme of things, the amount that I've actually listened to is very, very small compared to the output that they've churned out.
Yeah.
And there are like a handful of stories that I'll gladly come back to and listen again, sort of thing. Although it's been a couple of years, I think, since I last listened to this one. But yeah, it's in that sort of group of ones where I'm quite happy to put this on from time to time and just listen, just sit back and enjoy it, yeah, because I'm pretty sure I didn't buy it in 2011. I think it was probably one that came up on a they used to do really, really good sales, didn't they?
Yeah.
Where you could pick them up for a couple of quid, and I'm pretty sure I probably did. That's how I came across it was through via a sale.
Yeah.
And I think that it was really weird coming back to it. Like I say, I haven't really listened to it for a couple of years. There was a lot I could remember, but there was a lot that I had misremembered or forgotten because like there's they sort of kind of weave that music from the dead wife's funeral throughout it, and I seem to remember it being in the story quite a bit to kind of like the Ballad of the Last Chance Saloon kind of like proportions, but it isn't. You get a little bit at the beginning, you get a little bit in the middle, and then there's quite a bit of it at the end, and that's it. But I don't, in my head, it's it's pretty much floor to ceiling this lovely piece of sort of piano music. I couldn't remember the motive of the main protagonist in it neither. I kind of forgot that. It's just like I've listened to it a bunch of times, and I can't even remember. You know, I knew he was blaming the robots for some reason why his wife died, but I couldn't remember the exact circumstances. But yeah, it's weird how things don't stick.
Yeah, I find audio, for me, like television and film sticks like that. And like I can watch something once and it's with me forever. Audio, I have to be really invested, and books very rarely stick with me at all. So I think, again, that's also why I probably gravitate to the audio spin-offs over the books, is just because I remember them more. Having said that, I didn't remember much of this apart from it being rubbish, and I was wrong. So there we go.
Fair enough.
So is it a good sequel? Like, because you're not just, this isn't Return of the Quarks where you can do something exciting, or the Sontarans, who have had some good stories and some bad stories. This is a bona fide classic, and okay, there has been the Caldor City range, but that's more niche than Big Finish. And I think this is the first time Big Finish do the robots. There's the corpse marker book, but this is like real actors from Doctor Who, the Doctor, coming up against the robots of death again. So does it work?
Yeah, because I think that's the thing. It's sort of like one of those. It's one of those classic Doctor Who stories where it's almost like held in such high regard that you're onto a hiding to nothing to even think about going there, which is probably why we've had so little. And in fact, like, wasn't the first person to go back was Chris Boucher, wasn't it, with Corpse Marker? You know, which,
meh,
yeah, but yeah, this it lands because I think it kind of flips the robots of death on their head, because, you know, in that you've got someone who's actually turning the robots into murderers, whereas with this you've got a human that's almost trying to portray the robots as murderers, but they're not. He's the one that's doing the murdering, kind of thing. And I think that's really good, the way that it kind of flip-flops it, you know, because rather than kind of retelling the robots of death, we're doing it from a totally different perspective. The fact that the main protagonist has got robophobia that's been caused by the death of his wife.
Yeah.
And he's blaming the robots. So his state of mind, his mental health has caused him to go down this route. I think it's quite a strong story from that point. Quite, and quite well handled as well. Yeah. You know, because mental health, it's a you've got to get it right, otherwise you don't come across as being sympathetic or what have you, do you? You know, but
like it deals with some adult themes, shall we say, in this Doctor Who world, but it never goes too dark in that respect, and it never goes new adventures over the top with it either. It's quite a measured, well handled, well paced script with some good twists and turns, inverting your sort of expectations as a listener who is a Doctor Who fan that will have seen Robots of Death, but also completely works by itself. If you're someone that's just got into the Matt Smith era, all you really need to know is that there were some robots that killed people once, a couple of months ago, according to Nick Briggs. I think this is a really strong script from Briggsy, and I know he comes in for a bit of a bashing from time to time, and sometimes, you know, rightly so, because he's written a few duds, but he's firing on all cylinders here, isn't he?
Yeah, because I think that's the thing, because I know you covered it, the Dalek generation, and I've covered it with Joe and the rest of the
I was a lot kinder to it than you.
Yeah, we proper slated it. And
mainly, just so everybody knows, I mainly did that because Joe said it was the worst thing ever, so I specifically went in trying to be positive about it. It's not great.
No. But it's chalk and cheese when you compare it to this. This is sort of like, I guess, the peaks and troughs of Nick Briggs. This is more on the high note than.
Yeah.
like that.
But I think it's also his comfort zone. Like, his sort of Doctor Who is sort of Hinchcliffe era, and this may be a McCoy story, but I think if you're a fan of the Hinchcliffe and Holmes era, you will find a lot to enjoy in the story. Not just because it's one of their sort of key creations as a baddie, but because it's just tonally that level. It's dark, but not as dark as people think the Hinchcliffe and Holmes era is, because it's not actually as dark as people think it is. They just remember it being it because they were 7. I think it fits in with that, but then it also fits in with like the Briggs universe of Doctor Who, which is very much spaceships and battle cruisers and armies. It's a bit, I think I described it on another podcast recently as Nick Briggs's Doctor Who universe is the Earthshock universe, you know? It's troopers and it's scientists and it's workers, sort of day-to-day manual labour workers in space.
And also, I think if you're a McCoy fan, you'll like it as well. I think that's the thing. It feels like a story where you could be a fan of quite a few parts of the show, and you could go into this and like this because it hits. It's weird how it manages to kind of hit and resonate those notes right for those different eras of the show. Because I think again with this feels very much like the McCoy Doctor from season 26 rather than the New Adventures.
Yes.
He's not the Times champion in this, but he is a few steps ahead of everyone else in the story.
Yeah.
But he doesn't have all of the pieces. There's still bits that he's trying to put together, but he's kind of pushing the story along, and I kind of like. There's a lot of like you can feel Liv Chenka's frustration with the Doctor because she's like telling him, "I'm sick of you being mysterious. Why can't you just come out and say it?" and all this sort of stuff. And then I think later on in the story she says something like, It's like he knows all the answers, but he wants us to find them out for ourselves," which is very much that Doctor and Ace kind of relationship, wasn't it? He was feeding Ace and letting her come to the answers herself. He was given,
But also, if he shows up here and goes, "This is what's going on. These are all the issues," people will just lock him up and go, "You're a madman." He has to make the people around him believe the truth of the situation and come to their own conclusions so that he can solve that final piece and go, okay, so what is behind it? Because he needs those people on his side. And I think that's a much more interesting version of the Doctor, the one that just bowls in and goes, "I'm really clever," and everybody goes, "Oh, you are really clever. We better trust this guy."
Yeah, definitely. Because that's the thing. He has to win their trust, and that's a gradual kind of process.
And how do you feel about McCoy's performance?
I think it really plays to his strengths. So I think, like we've kind of alluded to this, that he does those quieter, those more mysterious kind of brooding moments are probably his strongest when he starts rolling his R's and all that sort of thing, and those kind of tropes. You still got that in this. So it was McCoy, but I think there's a lot of material in here that kind of does those more quieter, kind of introspective kind of moments.
Yeah.
I think because he hasn't got Ace in there trying to blow everything up and being Ace, I think it allows room for him to do those bits. So, I mean, there are bits in it where it's hilarious because, like, his being choked acting is really when he's like, doing all that kind of stuff. It's really, really very funny and probably quite cringe as well at the same time. But I think there's much more of that kind of where he, like I say, where he's just nudging people along, nudging the story along in a really quiet and kind of mysterious kind of way. And I think that I think that kind of really plays to his strengths, and I think that's why I really love these solo adventures of his, because it allows him to do that. It allows him to do the things that he does really well, rather than those pratfalls and
Yeah.
Yars and those quirky bits that are part of his Doctor. But
it's almost like without his comfort blankets of, be it Bonnie Langford or even Hex, like he doesn't have that person to bounce on and clown around with a bit more in terms of the performance. It's just him, and maybe the other actors are in the studio, but he doesn't know them as well, I'm assuming. And also the character, there isn't as much, like the character's not going to have such a warm relationship that evokes those performances in him because he's meeting people for the first time.
Yeah.
It's also just miles ahead from the McCoy performances we get now where, unfortunately he is very much like show up, and I know it's a cliche, but it is a cliche that's true. In later stories, McCoy, you could almost hear him turning the page.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. You get the impression that he's not reading this for the first time.
Yeah.
It's rehearsed, and he's kind of thought about how to deliver.
Yeah, like a script might have some notes on for continuity of performance and things like that. And I think you can really tell because it's like he's just rolled out a season 26 to all intents and purposes, and it's still a good 20 plus years later.
And you do wonder whether it is kind of bouncing off a quality actor like Nicola Walker, kind of thing, because that's, I think like you say at this point she's done Spooks and a few bits, but probably hasn't kind of done the lead roles that we kind of know her for now. But you can see what a good actress she is, and I think, I don't know, you kind of like when you're working with people of that quality, I guess that makes you raise your game as well.
She's a big enough actor that she gets sort of a pride of place on the front cover, which I think is quite telling.
Yeah.
I had said before that I really struggled with Nicola Walker in the Eighth Doctor stories, but now I think I might have got her all wrong because she was so good in this, and her as you say, her frustrations with the Doctor are really sort of well handled and well written. I mean, she wasn't a companion at this point, was she? Or she hadn't been announced as being a companion, I don't think.
No.
Guest character.
From listening to it, there are bits that they say that you kind of get the impression that they were lining her up to be the companion for the Eighth Doctor. That was the impression I got towards the end, where there was but I don't know how planned, in advance those sort of things are, or whether it was like, well, yeah, we can get Nicola Walker back and she can be a companion. I don't know.
She didn't become a companion to the Eighth Doctor until 2014, so we're still a couple of years away. So, I mean, maybe it was a plan and they were recording far ahead, but oh my God, she's done a lot of stories. A lot of stories. And, of course, she gets her own spin-off box set with the robots, doesn't she?
The robot? Yeah. No.
There's 6 fucking volumes of those. Jesus Christ. Have you heard any of them?
No.
No, neither. Somebody write in and tell me, are they any good? Are they worth 6 volumes? Apparently Big Finish think they were.
It's the sort of thing that would appeal to me, but I think it's just lack of time and lack of funds.
Yeah, absolutely. So what do we think about the rest of the cast here? It's quite a big cast, actually, for, it's a contained story, but there is Toby Hadoke, I suppose, is the other main guest star, but we've got Baz Pellico, played by William Hazel, Cellarat, played by Nick Pagg, Carvenet, played by Dan Starkey, and then various other voices by Matt Addis, John Dorney, and other members of the cast. I've obviously heard this before, and I think I've heard Toby Hadoke in a couple of things, but I don't know whether I've ever paid attention to him acting before. I think he gives a really good performance in there.
Yeah, that was my big surprise. Well, there were 2 big surprises, but that is one of them, was that how good Toby Hadoke was, because, for me, I know him for being a stand-up or being a presenter of Doctor Who documentaries and stuff like that, doing podcasts and things. I've seen him in other things because didn't he have he had a bit part in like Phoenix Nights? He was a bit part in Adventure in Time and Space and that sort of thing, wasn't it? But I think this is the biggest role that I've either seen or heard him in to date, kind of thing. But yeah, he's really good because it's quite a layered performance, isn't it? Because there's sort of like at times he's quite self-assured. There are times then when he's conversing with the captain, Salarat, where he comes across as quite bumbling and because I think I quite like the captain because he's really bad-tempered and sarcastic, and he just does not disguise his absolute contempt for Toby Hadoke's character.
But then Toby Hadoke's character's like that when he's not with Salarat, at the start. Yeah. Like it's the same sort of behaviour.
Yeah, and then but you basically get that kind of descent into the mental health issues kind of bubble to the front. So yeah, he it was a real surprise how good he was as an actor in this.
And I think like as he gradually unravels, because the sort of shouty military side of things is one thing, and you go, okay, that's good. And then the sort of meeker side of him. But if the character was going to, if the performance was going to slightly unravel, it would be at the more emotional stuff towards the end. But Toby, I think he nails the whole thing. Like a lesser actor, possibly, that's where they would have dropped it. And you sort of remember, oh no, Toby Hadoke is a really strong actor in that respect. And I think like the emotional beats, he really hits them and performs them well.
I think that's really good because to the point where obviously he's the main villain. He's killed people, but those bits at the end where you discover the backstory about his wife, how that sent him into this sort of like robophobia and all this sort of thing, you actually feel sorry for him. You feel compassion for him. Despite the terrible things that he has done. I mean, because is it at the end of this? There's only like about 4 characters that actually survive. Is it from that ship?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
and so he's killed all of the engineering, all of the tech support, various other people. But you can't help but feel sympathy for him. At what's driven him to do what he's done, and I think you wouldn't necessarily feel that if the performance hadn't been as good as what it was, So well done to Toby for that.
Absolutely, and as you said, Nick Pegg as Salarat again. Nick Pegg shows up in a lot of these things, but he just plays the part fantastically. I didn't actually realise it was Dan Starkey in here at all.
No,
which
that was my second big surprise, that was Dan Starkey playing the West Country security deputy. I had no idea it was him at all. So again, it was another really good performance because he's kind of like almost the red herring kind of character, because I think as the story kind of plays out, we're aware that the company agent that's killed at the beginning had found out someone on the ship had robophobia.
Yeah. And
we learn that obviously Dan Starkey's character has got robophobia. So we're kind of like, oh, is it him? So it's the red herring kind of thing in there. But again, I think it was another really good performance when, we're so used to him being Strax or what have you. I totally forgot that he was in this and that was his character, because it just doesn't sound like him.
We talked a bit about Briggs's story. I think with the script works. How do we feel about his direction of this story and the atmosphere he sort of creates?
I think it's really good because it kind of ebbs and flows. So you've got, and I think I like stories that do that, because I think if it's always up here, that could be exhausting. If it's too monotone, then it's boring. But you never get that with this, because it's sort of it's that pitch and level is constantly changing throughout it. And I think for a couple of episodes, you are kind of like, are the robots killing people?
Yeah,
and I think that's good to be able to maintain the mystery for as long as he did. But both from the writing point of view and also from the direction of it as well. I think again it just Yeah, he does really well. I think he does the voices for some of the robots as well, doesn't he?
Yeah, they've made a real effort to sort of differentiate the voices a bit more in this one. So all of the cast, basically, apart from McCoy and Walker, have a go at doing the voices. So Haydock's in there, Starkey's in there, Dorney, Addis, Briggs. They're all having a go.
But I mean, even that, because I think sometimes I think we've probably not at this point, but I think we've become, as Doctor Who fans, we're watching the TV series, we're listening to this sort of stuff, etc., and I think we've become a bit oversaturated with Nick Briggs, haven't we? Because he is the voice of so many different races and aliens and what have you. But even having him in here as one of the Vocs, it kind of felt right. It didn't kind of like, oh, freaking hell, it's Nick Briggs again doing a voice of one of the aliens, you know. You didn't have that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I just think the whole thing holds together really well. I think everybody's on their A game. I don't think it drops a particular beat. I think it's actually pretty sort of, scary's the wrong word, but I think it's tense enough. And when there is fear in the characters, they portray it well, so the audience knows what's going on. The music doesn't oversell it as well. As you say, that's sort of got its peaks and troughs. And I just think it's such a well put together production. I think at this point, Big Finish were also doing a fair amount of arcs and things like that. So a story like this doesn't really sit in an arc or anything like that. It's not, you know, the gods and monsters thing they were doing with the Seventh Doctor elsewhere. It's not the Evelyn stuff. So it's just a standalone story. And if you're someone that's into your arcs, which I was again at the time, I probably was just like, well, this is just whatever. Yeah. This is just another Seventh Doctor story with some robots of death in them.
Yeah, it's a bit of a throwaway thing, like disposable, isn't it? Because it's not part of anything.
Yeah. But coming back to it on its own, it's not disposable at all. Like, it's just such a solid bit of Doctor Who that just works, like, on every level for me.
Obviously, I don't have that experience of Big Finish that you yourself do, but it's one that I just happened upon by chance, and it's one that really kind of, it just struck a chord with me, and I've loved it ever since, really.
Is there anything else you want to say on it?
There are a couple of things. I thought it was nice that we had some little throwbacks to the Robots of Death. So I can't remember. I think it's either. I think it might be the fourth part where the Voc Robots say something along the lines of "Please do not fire those weapons at me" or something like that, which obviously is the same as, like, you know, don't throw hands at me or whatever it is in Robots of Death. So I thought that was quite a nice little touch that only you know, true fans will get. And also I kind of I like that conversation that's quite early on in the story where Baz, he chances upon the Doctor, who's just like trying to pass himself off as one of the engineering crew. Yeah. And they're having this conversation. He goes, "Sorry, what are you wearing?" kind of thing. And he's like, "Oh, well, it's just something that we are trying out on the engineering deck." And he goes, "Well, what's with the hat?" And he goes, "Well, it's for protection from, what is it, like vapor leakage or something?"
Something like that, yeah.
And then he goes, "Well, what's with that?" And he goes, "Oh, what, my umbrella?" And he goes, "Oh, that's for bigger vapor leakages and sort of thing." So I think that although it's quite a serious story in a lot of ways, they also have some nice little bits of humour added in there just to keep that light side. But yeah, I kind of like those. I mean, I think Baz was he was an interesting character because he kind of feels quite different from everyone else in it, because he's almost like this, I want to say, camp Northerner. Yeah. You know, a lot of like, you know, he's got like the structure of the language that he uses is quite different from everyone else in the story, because you know, he's like, you know, there's a lot of darling and sweetheart and you.
Well, it's not quite said, but it's implied he's the gay best friend, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Which is quite, again, at this stage in Big Finish, there's no reason why they shouldn't, but it's not something that ever seems to come into, but it's just little moments that, you're trying to get a dynamic of different people on the ship. And I think classic Doctor Who tends to have quite often the ship is 10 of the same people. Yeah. So it's quite interesting that in this Nick Briggs world of Earthshock's Doctor Who, that you've got this slightly more down-to-earth character that is slightly more relatable than some of the other people on board the spaceship. It sort of humanises it a bit more.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing. It does feel like a diverse kind of crew, because like we say with like Dan Starkey's character, he's very much from Bristol in the West Country, isn't he? Kind of with that accent. So it's quite nice that there is that there's sort of diversity on all kinds of levels, rather than like you say, a crew of 10 characters all the same in a way.
This does a really good job of avoiding those cliches.
Yeah, definitely.
Excellent. So I think we must rate it then, if there is nothing else to say. Be it a clanger, a banger, or an average meander, what say you?
I'm going to go banger.
Excellent. I too will go banger.
Oh, excellent.
It was great to revisit it and have a completely different experience to had the first time round.
Too hot for TV.
Look, Dan, this has been great to visit and revisit these two adventures today. I've had a whale of a time. If people want to, where can they find you on the internet?
I'm on most social media platforms, mainly Twitter. I haven't joined the vast exodus from that yet. I'm still clinging on by the skin of my teeth. But yeah, I'm on Instagram, Facebook, and Blue Sky, all that sort of stuff. From a podcast point of view, I guess I'm one of the few Doctor Who fans that hasn't got their own podcast. But I do kind of
you get around.
Yeah, I've been on a lot, and I suppose I'm kind of semi-regular now on like the Hamster Book Club with Joe and a couple of others. So yeah, you'll be able to track me down and find me doing something or another Doctor Who related.
Excellent. Well, it was a pleasure to have you, and you are welcome back on Too Hot for TV anytime.
No, thank you for having me. I like I say, it's been. I feel a bit starstruck.
Next time, I'll be joined by Gareth Preston, and we'll be looking at the missing stories of Farewell Great Macedon and the Queen of Time. But until next time, I've been Dylan.
And I've been Dan.
And this has been Doctor Who, Too Hot for TV.
Too hot for TV.
But
yeah,
again, it just goes to show that, like, you sometimes you're just not in the state of mind for a particular type of story or a particular story, and so there's hope for any of us yet with any era of the show.
Well, I think I've had sort of like the similar things because I think like I wasn't a great fan of the 13th Doctor era, but coming at it, having seen some of 14 and 15 since, and then coming back to it, I can appreciate it a lot more than I did. So it's strange that sometimes doing things out of order and out of context can just throw some light on it that you never saw before and really open your eyes. And yeah.
The 13th Doctor reappraisal is real, and it's happening.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yes, yeah.